I mean, you can watch interviews with Paul Simon. He can come off as, I wouldn't call him a prick, but he is a little bit prickly. Like he's not like
Comes off standoffish.
he's not this jovial
It's like
guy.
Queen. It might.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a little prickly around the edges.
Yeah,
So but
yeah.
there's also the like
Isn't there
the
some little man
ethos that
syndrome?
I get from him is like, you cross me, never again. Like
Right. Like it's a little
if
little
you
man
if you
syndrome.
fuck me over once, then you're gone forever.
That Napoleon complex.
Yeah,
Little Napoleon complex going on, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So,
And so
so
the interaction between the two of them, like it's fascinating because Paul Simon's an incredible songwriter, like is one of the greatest to ever live. And Garfunkel's got the voice. Paul Simon's got a decent voice, but our Garfunkel is, his voice is like the voice of the angels. Like it's incredible. Um, so the icon, there's an iconic story where when they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that was the first time they had played together in 25 or 30 years or whatever.
wow. Hold on. So how many albums did they do together?
Um, 4 or 5.
Yeah, New Edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like New Edition.
Um, and the first ones, I mean, like the first ones didn't hit, and then they re-released some of the other. It was that kind of thing. The first one was called Wednesday Morning 3 a.m., which didn't really do anything at all. And then the Sound of Silence is one.
Garfunkel had a solo career too.
Sort of ish, yes.
He released like one or two albums though, right?
He did, yes. They were
Well,
not like a
I,
thing,
I
but
worked in a record store and I can remember his stuff being on the shelf and at Manifest on South
yeah,
Boulevard.
it is
Yeah,
it did exist. Like he did
yeah.
do it. And he was an actor in a couple things like in the 80s and
But
stuff.
Paul Simon was clearly the star because he had the songwriting ability. Is pretty
Yeah,
much what you're saying. The songwriting ability superseded the voice.
yeah. But it's an interesting question to think about whether Paul Simon would have been able to break through as a songwriter without having done that
Without having
first.
a voice.
Right.
Right.
I mean, he had a long and distinguished solo career afterwards.
He did.
So he's clearly capable of doing it, but I don't know. It's hard. It's an interesting question whether it would have happened if he hadn't done the other first. And because people obviously already knew who he was at that point.
Right.
So
I kind of some of what you're kind of like explaining personally about Simon and Garfunkel is how I feel about the artist Sade. It's
okay.
like, well, I grew up on her.
Mm-hmm.
She was like my mother's favorite, so I was never really even clear on how big she was
Mm-hmm.
until I became an adult and kind of like had to backtrack and see because she was big in my house. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, how big was she? It's like, oh no, 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 she's a big deal everywhere. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, in true to form, it's like my daughter's middle name is Sade. So
Yeah. And Sade's so smooth, man. Like, I mean, it's
it was
just,
operating.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and Art Garfunkel is kind of that way. Like that voice is just, um, and the Boxer is more of a Paul Simon song. Like it's mostly him singing.
No, 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 no,
Um,
no. Yeah.
so, um, usually the ones where you have the stories being told are him,
Yeah.
and are mostly him singing. So yes, I love their music. But I didn't know a ton about their personal history. Like the iconic Rock and Roll Hall of Fame story, like when they were inducted, um, Garfunkel goes first and says, thank you, blah, 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 blah. And thanks to Paul Simon for writing these incredible songs that you allowed me to play some small part in lending my voice to, or something like that. And Paul Simon said something else, and I should have written it down. I don't want to misquote him, but something to the effect of, "You're damn right, I or dragged you along," or something. I mean, he didn't say exactly those words in that tone, but basically that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, obviously, you're
Kind of
setting that
like
up to say like,
if
"Oh,
I would
you've
have had
helped
your
me a
voice,
lot too. Your voice is so beautiful." I mean, that kind of thing. And he's like,
right.
"No,
He's
like,
pretty much saying if I would have had your voice, I would have never needed you.
yeah, exactly."
Right.
And he's not wrong. Like, but um,
I mean, there are so many people. I mean, that's another conversation for another day about how people, deal with fame and music
yeah.
and contributions to the music and so on and so forth. So you're saying that it's like, remember I was saying it's like it's usually over a girl or over money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was about money still at the end of the day, because truthfully, when Paul Simon became big enough and became famous enough that he didn't need them,
Yeah, he's like,
right? And like I said, so that's still the money involved. That
yeah,
like money has something to do with that. You know what I mean?
oh yeah,
And money has something to do with the drug and the alcohol intake. Because hey, guess what?
yep,
That guy couldn't get loaded like that when y'all were probably two, you know, lower middle
right,
class kids coming out of Queens.
yep,
Can't buy no
exactly,
8 ball with you can't buy no 8 ball with
yeah,
dad's
exactly,
wharf money. You know what I mean? He's working
yep,
at the docks. He don't buy no 8 balls with that money, but there's buying 8 balls with rock star money and doing
oh yeah,
rock star things. So this is one of those stories to me, just from the outside looking in. It's like money coming and corrupting the situation again. And that's why I brought up the Q-tip line about just being comfortable and not
yeah,
being rich. Because sometimes being rich is more dangerous. Like sometimes it's better that you have enough for what you need and just enough to save to have the life that God wants for you, than to have like all this excess, because this excess
yeah,
leads to breakups.
exactly. I want to have. You just want to have enough that you don't have to really particularly think about it. Like it's not. I
Right.
mean, you still think about it because you got to plan for your kids and stuff like that. But like, it's not. You're not worrying about whether I'm going to be able to pay this thing or this thing. It's just you're just I don't have to think
Right.
about it in that way. You want to get into the lyrics of the boxer? Or do you want to like talk some about Nas?
I'm either way. I mean, we talk. I think we've done a synopsis of the boxers. If you want to get into some of the specifics of the lyrics, like that's why I kind of wanted you to guide like the specifics of the lyrics, because
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be able to connect the dots more than speaking to the lyrics. Because I think we've kind of discussed this already. Well, you can tell the songwriting talent's there,
Yeah.
because like songwriting wise, it feels like he almost wrote two separate songs and put them together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, that's that songwriting talent stuff where it's like, well, it sounds like he took some of this, piece that, wove it together, used some connective tissue, some
Yeah.
connecting words, conjunctive words.
Mm-hmm.
Classic. So there's some of that going on. It's lyrically dense. This is the most, I think, lyrically dense song, in my opinion, in terms of songwriting that we've had.
Yeah. Except
Because
maybe Joni Mitchell. Yeah.
I was thinking the Joni Mitchell, but there's something about this that does feel more real than that.
Yeah. This has a grittier edge for sure.
Yes, there it is.
It's a
That's
different.
what I was for.
Yeah.
It's grittier. It's grittier than the Joni Mitchell. Right.
And it feels in a way like Wu Tang and Meth, like those kinds of. It has
Yes.
that edge to it, which is really funny because Simon and Garfunkel had the reputation in the '60s and '70s of being like these. I don't want to use the word candy ass, but like they were like the easy listening folk band. Like they're like the intro into folk band, because some of that shit that was coming out like Greenwich Village and stuff like that was like
Right. Really hit.
hardcore communist like kind of stuff. So they were where people like overlook some people's artistry because they have beautiful voices. Um, like you miss out on the actual depth of the lyrics. It was that kind of thing with them. Hey y'all, thanks for making it to the end of this video. If you love this, check out this video right here. It's another one that where Coop and I are talking about how two songs go together that you wouldn't maybe think go together. So thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time.